Welcome to the Inside EcoDuvo podcast, where we highlight economic development happening in the state of Missouri. I'm your host, Eric Thurman, with the Missouri Department of Economic Development. We're continuing our coverage of the recent National Security Crossroads event. This episode covers military installations and defense communities. Military installations are the cornerstone of a defense ecosystem, and the communities that support those installations are just as important. How do you ensure that both achieve their highest economic potential? Well, that's what this episode will cover, and the panelists you'll hear from on this topic include Colonel Gerald Nunziato, who is the Fort Riley Garrison Commander, Dorsey Newcomb, who is the Executive Director at the Fort Leonard Wood Institute and the Sustainable Ozarks Partnership, and Dr. Jerrod Wheeler, who's Superintendent of Noster Public Schools. This panel is moderated by Brad Johnson with the Matrix Design Group. Let's listen in.
The Military Installation and Defense Communities panel. I'm Brad Johnson. I'm a Vice President in Matrix Design Group. My background, a little over 25 years active duty in the Air Force that culminated in a Vice Command assignment at the Air Force Civil Engineer Center down in San Antonio. Previous to that, the garrison level command for the Air Force as the Mission Support Group Commander at Joint Base Andrews. Joined Matrix in 2023, and we've talked about our pieces into this journey. This was the first pursuit that I was put on and learned a ton on it. Very excited that it was one that we were successful in capturing, but most importantly, along the way for the whole journey, for my development and understanding, even coming from 25 years background, elevating in defense leadership, every day of this effort, I've probably said to myself, man, I wish I knew that when I was at, Andrews or Spangdahlem or whatever base I was at, because, what is being done through here in the NSC and represented in the smaller, more local organizations is extremely impactful and important. So, again, appreciate the opportunity to moderate this panel, focusing again on the military installation and defense communities. In the last panel, there was early talk about what that installation means, both from a standpoint of being a strategic asset for national defense, but those resources that are invested into those installations in those communities to, one, the dollars to build, execute, and deliver mission, as well as the human resources, which we've talked about significantly, greatly contribute not just locally in those communities, regionally, and state, and in this case, we're looking at it across a very large region. So we'll be focusing on that in this panel, kind of tying in what we've talked about leading up to this, and then what the NSC and the benefit of the NSC brings. So with that, we'll jump into our distinguished panel, who is well equipped to lead us in this dialogue on this topic. First, starting immediately to my right, Colonel Gerald Nunziato. He is the Fort Riley Garrison Commander, assuming that role, taking command this last summer. And in fact, when we visited, Colonel Nunziato, I think you were in your second week. We wouldn't have known it, but what I did notice is extremely high energy, and I even remarked today that his energy still remains very high, and those that have been in a garrison level command know that that's very tiring. You do have a great leadership team, but he said, well, I'm faking it very well, or something to that effect. As we heard, Fort Riley supports a connected military population of over 60,000 with in excess of $2 billion of economic contribution, and Colonel Nunziato will certainly elaborate on that. He's in his 25th year of active service, 14 assignments, 5 combat deployments. Of note, he is a graduate of National Defense University's College of International Security Affairs. And as I was doing a little bit of research on him, I read, and I did confirm with him just to make sure, he had never been to Kansas before. He stepped on, Riley to assume command of that fantastic garrison and the missions there. So, Colonel Nunziato, thank you, and I'll turn it over to you to give us a little bit of your thoughts on what's going on at Fort Riley, your interaction and things in the community and what that means, and then some discussions that you would like to share with us. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks, Brad. And yes, it was First time going to Kansas and coming into my first springtime in Kansas, I've learned the environment affects you a little bit differently than what you got in North Carolina and other places I've been. So apologies, I'm doing a little bit of that today. But yes, 25th year of service, spent the first 24 years just passing through the gates at whatever installation I was stationed at, go to the field, jump out of an airplane, do what I need to do, and go home. And I never understood what it took to run or manage a garrison, is a better term. The people involved, both inside the wire and outside the wire. And coming to Fort Riley, it is unbelievably eye-opening when you have a team that makes it. So that motivation is, carrying the team on my shoulder. I know they got their back, and my Army-assigned best friend up there, CSM Ackerson, we came into this together and learning on the run, and it's been a fun time. So yes, connecting back to some of the comments made in the previous panel, tell a little story of Fort Riley, talk about our population and what that means outside the wire, and then what it means to be connected with our community members around in Manhattan, Junction City area. So Fort Riley, as you know, 101,000 acres. Most all of that, about 98,000 of that is attributed to training space. We own all of our airspace at 29,000 feet. 50, 60 mile corridor out to Salina airspace that we own, that we fly through. 14 spur railhead that Union Pacific has a contractual agreement with Fort Riley to pass through it since 1865. So when we need to go somewhere, we could get there within 2 days, 2.5 days, east, west to southern ports, whatever you need. They go straight from our rail yard straight to the port. We don't go to the transfer area. That's important because that is some critical stuff to the Army. The Army needs rail to move, and we have it here at Fort Riley, and we have it here in Kansas. And we have the airspace to shoot whatever you want. We have the maneuver space to drive whatever you want and shoot it however you want. And I emphasize that at the start here because that's not highlighted outside of this arena too much. 24 years of service, never been to Riley. I didn't understand what Riley had. Riley has better maneuver area than Stewart, Drum, Bragg, Cavazos, Carson, JBLM. I could go on and on. We have better airspace control and ability to fire than all those same garrisons listed. Only competitive is Fort Irwin, California, and White Sands, New Mexico. Both deserts and both places nobody wants to go. Fort Riley, people want to go. So I asked the community, highlight that on the military side. But when we talk about population, yes, 60,000 connected population. That's everywhere from our active duty service members through our veterans outside the gates that we have access to. We're able to consume up to 15,000 assigned service members. Number's a little bit down due to where we are in the patch chart and deployment cycle. We're around the 13,000 mark right now. But another 15,000 family members. The vast majority live on the garrison in our 3,800 homes. And the other portion of those families, other 6,000 plus family members, live in the surrounding 8 counties to Fort Riley. So, they're driving from all over to come into the area. And then there's about 5,000 civilians that work on the garrison. The garrison staff itself that takes to manage the base is just over 700 civilians. And AK and I, we work damn hard to see every single one of those civilians and shake their hand and say thank you, because they make things run. They plow the roads when it snows. They keep the targets moving when we're shooting. They're doing stuff. They're doing a road project right now as we drove out here and get to spend the day with y'all. Those are the people that keep the base alive and keep the force focused on what they need to focus on. And all those people are coming from the Midwest area. They are true Kansans, and we can talk about it later, and a lot of them are retirees. That civilian workforce and that connection to retain them is important. And then when we start talking about impact, we're just north of $2 billion of direct economic impact to the Flint Hills region. And when we say direct, we're talking that's based off of salaries, contracts, things of that nature. $56 million of outpatient care given to our local medical community outside the wire. That's $24 million of federal impact aid that we bring into the local school districts, which we make up about 18% of the student population in that Flint Hills region. Just north of 5,500 students, primarily in USD 475, and then USD 383 has a few hundred themselves, and it kind of trickles out from there. That's critical to us. That's our population that every day is in Junction City, in Manhattan, in Wamego, in Abilene, in the surrounding community. So that's why it's critical to us to maintain that support. And one of the ways we do that is through our partnerships and agreements. So Fort Riley, we currently have 96 official agreements or partnerships with the local community. It's pretty outstanding. And when you look at the stuff that really where the rubber meets the road, that's our intergovernmental service agreements. So we have 4, very stout ones. We have one with KDOT, where our safety team is able to provide bike helmets and child seats to the military members that need it. We just won an award from the state of Kansas for our support in that arena. We have an agreement with Kansas State University that started out as a archaeological dig agreement because of some of the Native American remains that we would find. We would call them in, and they would use it as a study ground and dig them up and be able to make sure that they're repatriated appropriately. That's grown into an agreement with K-State that essentially, if they teach it, we can consume it, and then vice versa. So we're still trying to understand exactly what that means. We just signed that in October, but AK is going to laugh at me. K-State agriculture wants to repopulate the Konza Prairie with prairie chickens, and we have a lot of prairie chickens. I've never seen one, but we have them. They want to study our elk population. One of the largest elk populations in the state of Kansas is on Fort Riley. We just did an elk count a couple weeks ago. It's several hundred elk herd that's traveling through. So things like that K-State wants to come down and, hey, we could do the agreement. It's already in place. What do you want to do to study it? And then conversely, we have a mounted color guard. So we have a lot of horses. And I have one vet to manage all the horses. Well, K-State, I don't know if you know this, but their land grant, they have a pretty large veterinary program. So that's an opportunity to use some of their students to help manage our horses. We have a lot of land out there at Riley. We do land lease to cut hay. Well, we've learned that we have fairly low quality hay for horses. So K-State wants to come down and we're inviting them, hey, let's do a study on our hay. How can we grow better quality hay for our horses? And conversely, the farmers that are harvesting that grass or that hay to use it appropriately. So that's what that agreement's about. Then we have one with the city of Manhattan. It's a bulk salt agreement. Basically, it snows here, as I've learned this year, and we need a lot of salt. So something simple as an agreement with the city, we're saving $100,000 a year in cost for salt because we're buying it at a reduced price. And then the state of Manhattan, they don't have to build a storage facility to the tune of a couple million in maintenance. They store it on the base and come pick it up when they need it. So that was pretty substantial. But the one IGSA that we're most proud about is our design build IGSA, and that's with USD 475. Basically, USD 475 acts as our clearinghouse for contracting if we want to do any renovations to facilities on the base. And we pay up front, guaranteed contracts, we pay the money up front, and it goes into an escrow account. And USD 475 earns 8% interest off what we pay into that. So since the life of this IGSA, we've paid in about $108 million into that. So if you want to do the percentage on that 8% of $108 million, that's money flowing straight in the USD 475 that they could use for technological upgrades, any improvements they need to do, capital improvements to their schools. What that means to us is, I don't know if I have any USACE people in the room because they'll get mad at me, but we're not paying some of that federal overhead if we manage through USACE. So we're saving to the tune of millions of dollars of renovation costs to execute our projects. And we're in the final throes of getting that same level of agreement with USD 383 up in Manhattan, because it's critically important. One, for us, but then that economic inject into the school. And we've been touting this to the national level. We have our local representatives are very keen to what we're doing, and we're trying to change policy to allow us to do major military construction under this agreement, which, if that goes through, you're now talking about projects in the hundreds of millions of dollars that are staying in the state of Kansas. For example, we built a hospital a couple years ago. USACE ran it. It was contracted with a major contractor out of New Mexico, and they came in and built it. Yeah, they hired some subcontractors, but that bulk of that money was going to the main contractor in New Mexico. Our 475 contractor, little contractor, mom and pa startup, you may have heard of them, Hutton. and you were looking at Manhattan, they have their school district has a contractor to utilize the same efforts. So that's critically important to us because we're keeping money in, we're able to do projects that help us at a lower cost, and it's helping the local community by injecting monies in. But then you look at that relationship with the communities, which of all the bases I've been to, this is without a doubt the strongest connection that I've seen between a military installation and the locals. You know, we have Miss Christian Bishop up there, and we have our JC crew up here, and Rob Wilson, he told me I had to say his name, so we have Rob Wilson up there. He has a nice beard, so I say his name. But, you know, we meet with them on a regular basis to talk initiatives. To the tune of tomorrow, I have members of our team sitting down with the Junction City crew to talk a DSIPS project that we're trying to get across the goal line. You know, we had DSIP projects a couple years ago with Manhattan, but we are actively engaged with the communities because them getting these projects done help us, and them getting the projects done help them, both infrastructure-wise and you know, economically. That's where we see it, where we don't go a day where we're not doing some type of relationship with the community. You know, AK and I sit on the 475 school board. We're non-voting members, but we're able to have discussions during executive time that influence things that are going on. And we have 5 schools on the installation that are run by 475. We can't go a day without doing something with our Flint Hills partner. So yeah, I just want to speak to that importance. You know, you started out talking military population, economic impact, but you know, kind of just want to end it there with the criticality of that relationship outside the gates where we can't do this with our civilian partners.
Well, thank you, Colonel Nunziato. Well, I hope you all felt that passion all the way through it, starting with passion for mission, getting things on target, everything from the resources that you have there at Riley, the ranges, the maneuver space, the transportation, the people, and then wrapping up there with tying in the importance of the community and the success there. So thank you very much. I do have to say, I'm not sure what a prairie chicken is, but when you talked about it and then you said you hadn't seen it, I had flashbacks of my brother and my older brother and his friends taking me snipe hunting. I don't know if anybody's been snipe hunting. That might be an old thing, but I think that might be what prairie chickens are. But in all seriousness, thanks so much, Colonel. That was fantastic. On to our next panelist, to the Colonel's right, Command Sergeant Major retired Dorsey Newcomb. He's the Executive Director at Leonard Wood Institute and Sustainable Ozarks Partnerships, where he's been serving as director for almost 6 years, but more importantly, has been serving in a leadership capacity in that organization for about 17 years. And this is all following a distinguished 25-year active duty career in the Army, culminating as the Commandant of the Maneuver Center of Excellence Non-Commissioned Officer Academy at Fort Leonard Wood. He's a graduate of the United States Sergeants Majors Academy and extremely unique, inducted into the Military Police Hall of Fame in 2018. So, Dorsey, look forward to your comments a little bit about the organization, Leonard Wood Institute and SOP, but your perspective from both a career inside the fence, delivering the mission and relying on those partnerships, to now continuing to serve and enhance those things. So look forward to your comments, and over to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to not only to be here for this first event for the National Security Crossroads, but to be able to participate as a panel member. Brad was giving away the numbers of years I had service and how many years I've been in this job, and you start doing the math. But I joined the Army when I was 2 years old, so subtract some of that, some of those years there. But I really want to congratulate everyone that's been involved in putting this together. I think this is a great idea, this initiative, and it's come about at the right time. There's a lot going on that's much different than when the SWOT analysis was being conducted. And there's lots of changes, and we're all learning very rapidly, but you have to accept the changes and look for opportunities. And so I think that's what it's all about. So I'm proud to say that I lead this nonprofit that Brad described. It's a 501c3 defense community support organization that it's been in existence for a number of years. It was founded by Joe Driscoll. Many of you know Joe's here with us today. And Joe hired me when I came out of the Army in 2008. So I worked for him before he moved on to go back to the state, longer than anybody I'd worked for in my adult life. So I learned a lot from him and attribute the organization's success to him. So we are much like what exists around other installations in the country, communities that come together and have an organization that support their military installations. And our particular goal is to support Fort Leonard Wood, long-term sustainability, mission growth, and quality of life. And we do that through a 3-year strategic plan that we have formalized. And we have a board of directors that are all volunteers. We have a small paid staff. There's 2 of us that are full-time. And we use a number of consultants to do some of the things that we're able to accomplish. And when we describe ourselves as a Sustainable Ozarks Partnership, or SOP for short, we include a lot of folks in that. So that includes our Army partners, our state and local leaders, all of our stakeholders, our congressional delegation, our congressional staffers, just a whole lot of folks that really work together and form the network that we have to try to successfully advocate for Fort Leonard Wood and its future. There are a lot of challenges. We've endured a lot of challenges over the years. We've accomplished quite a bit collectively. But we're proud to say, for example, this year we were selected to be Army Community Partnership Award-winning community and installation. So we will go to the Pentagon on April the 10th with our Army partners and receive that award. And again, that is consistent with one of our primary goals, is to bring positive attention to Fort Leonard Wood and to our region. The one thing I think about the National Security Crossroads and why it's important is because it gives folks like me an opportunity to describe for you all and others all the great things that represent, our installation. So Fort Leonard Wood is South Central Missouri. It's an Army training installation, but it also trains the largest contingent of Marines found anywhere outside of a naval or Marine base. It trains the Air Force, it trains the Navy, trains Homeland Defense. Anybody that's driving a tractor trailer for the Department of Defense trains at Fort Leonard Wood. It's the proponent for the weapons of mass destruction for the Department of Defense. It has a live chemical training agent facility. I could just go on and on and on about the unique things that are done at Fort Leonard Wood. And it's also one of 4 installations, well, technically 3, that perform basic combat training. And so it's a great mission to have. It's a very unique installation, lots and lots of different attributes that I could tell you about that we're really proud of. One of the things that, we like to boast about is the fact that we are relatively unencroached. The majority of the installation is surrounded by the Mark Twain National Forest, so that's really a plus. The fact that we have a joint use airport on our installation where commercial daily service goes to Dallas and Chicago is another attribute. Our public schools that service our installation in our communities are some of the best in the state. We've got a $400 million brand new hospital that's getting ready to open. We've got hundreds of millions of dollars being invested in barracks and housing, and the list just goes on and on and on. But those things are made possible through the collective advocacy of all those folks that I described for you just as I was opening my comments. We are located on the installation in an enhanced use lease area, a technology park that's owned by the local electric co-op. So that makes it very easy for us to stay connected with our Army partners day in and day out. We're working with the garrison commander and the installation commanding general and his team. And so we've had a long-standing relationship that has proven to be very beneficial, mutually beneficial for everyone. And, it really takes a lot of collaboration to do some of the things that have been done over the years. But it is very necessary, as I think I said, that Fort Leonard Wood is the 5th largest employer in the state of Missouri, $2.5 billion economic impact. So, not only is it very critical to our national defense, but it's important to our state and regional economy. And so we're always looking at ways that we can help advocate for Fort Leonard Wood and pay attention to the things that are important to the Department of Defense leaders, the Army particularly. But that's very consistent with quality of life things that you all know very much about. It's been talked about here today, whether it's spouse employment, availability of child care, transitioning service members, quality of public education. There are so many things that are consistent with our local communities and our society in general that are important, that are just as important for our military folks. And of course, our Army partners want to know that our communities and our state are vested in doing the things to attract people to the installation and want to serve there and also retain folks. I think that I'm a good example of that. I first came to Fort Leonard Wood under a BRAC closure where Fort McClellan, Alabama closed. And I came to Fort Leonard Wood. It was our first experience coming to Missouri. We were a little bit reluctant, but after we were there for a little while, we grew to love it very much, and we went away for a number of years and came back and spent some more time there prior to my retirement. So, just can't say enough about the good things of the community and the installation, and I just appreciate the opportunity to kind of share with you. And I'd like to just say, if you're ever out in the South Central area, driving down Interstate 44 and you want to see what's going on at Fort Leonard Wood, please just let us know. We'd be happy to show you around. There's a lot of things that I think you'd be very much impressed with. So thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you our story about our community and our installation.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dorsey. And first off, congratulations on that Army Community Partnership Award. That is certainly significant, and look forward to kind of learning what went into that. But no, that's a huge collaboration and what this is all about. You guys are leading the way. Apologize on the numbers of years I put in there. I was not highlighting your age. I was highlighting your wisdom. So make sure that's clear. Yeah, give those years back. So put those back in there. All right, and wrapping up to, I guess, with our baseball theme, the pinch hitter, filling in, and really I don't consider a fill-in. I'm really excited. But Dr. Jerrod Wheeler, he's the Superintendent of Schools in Noster, Missouri. Noster is the seat and host of Whiteman Air Force Base. So perfect, fill-in for us here. He's got his doctorate of education from the University of Louisiana Monroe. And one thing I said I would brag on a little bit, and I know he's certainly proud of, he's been there 10 years, and in that time, he's elevated that school district to the number one of 154 for quality of education as measured by the Air Force scorecard. The Air Force went out and developed a very objective scorecard, certainly measuring things that are extremely challenging, and to be number one of 154, you can't go up any more than that, correct? So certainly fantastic thing I wanted to highlight. So why I'm excited for Dr. Wheeler. He's got that education capacity, this community partnership piece he is integral and integrated into Whiteman Air Force Base. And in a third capacity, he sits on and serves on the board with the Association of Defense Communities, which many of you all are familiar with. I'll ask Dr. Wheeler to provide a little bit of perspective to it. But with that, there has been, as you can imagine, a lot of work and discussion in that space. And we'll ask that you talk to that a little bit and what you see from it, opportunities and challenges. So, Dr. Wheeler, again, thanks for being here and look forward to what you're sharing with us today.
Thank you, Brad. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to say thank you to all of you for participating today. This is something that is very important, that has taken time to develop over a number of years, and we're really excited about what's going on today. So I want to start off by sending regrets from Colonel Butler, our wing commander. Colonel Nunziato mentioned the airspace around Fort Riley and owning that, and it was really impressive. The B-2 and Whiteman own the rest of it around the world. So duty called for Colonel Butler today, but glad to be here. So I'm going to kind of talk in three different lanes. My day job is Superintendent of Schools, and then how we engage at the local level through Whiteman Area Leadership Council, Whiteman Base Community Council, and then on a national level with Association of Defense Communities. As Brad said, I'm not nearly as old or wise as Dorsey here. I've only been in this for 10 years, but it has been such a blessing to be able to serve in this capacity. Noster Public Schools, like Waynesville Public Schools, is a heavily military impacted school district with about 65% or 2 out of every 3 of our students being connected to the mission. So there are only about 20 school districts like that across the country, and that allows us to really engage as advocates and leaders for military child education. When I was hired in at Noster, our school district had actually been targeted for improvement. So we were definitely in need of some significant realignment. And I remember shortly after being hired, we had really great leadership at the time. Paul Tibbetts, you may recognize that name, some of you, as his grandfather flew the Enola Gay. But we had a very closed-door discussion about real needs for improvement. And once that door opened, we were locked arms and locked step and headed down this path. And 10 years later, we are emerging as a very strong school district and leader. What we know is that strong installations, strong communities, and strong schools go hand in hand. And when you talk about what's most important to our service member families, probably the top of the list for most is the quality of education. They call ahead, they ask about the schools, what's going on in that community, because oftentimes the public schools are the hub of the community for those families. And by the way, one of the largest employers in the community aside from the installation. So that's kind of my day job. I didn't know a lot about service or Department of Defense 10 years ago. Jumping ahead to today, like I said, it's been quite the interesting storyline. What I've learned through this is installations, our leadership on base and our service member families are working hard. Our community members are working hard. Our families and children are working hard. All of that hard work pays off, and we were probably all brought up on the same expectations that hard work matters. But the network is the exponent that multiplies the effort of that hard work. And I like to see what's going on here with the National Security Crossroads. We're all working hard in our own ways, but how we can work together through this network, building it, strengthening it, aligning it, is what is really going to move the needle or the ball down the field here in the Crossroads. So that's kind of the approach that we've taken there in Noster and Whiteman. We have the Whiteman Area Leadership Council. Greg Franken, our president, is back rower, keeping an eye on everybody today, but has done a really nice job of helping with local efforts. We're structured very similar to the Sustainable Ozarks Partnership, run off a strategic plan and the same type of activities. But we also are really aligned. We were kind of organized as an anti-BRAC organization, and we've now developed into that strong advocacy for mission sustainability. I know many of you in this room have helped us successfully land the B-21 mission. We're really excited about that. And for the current efforts on the 442nd replacement mission, I want to say thank you to our key stakeholders that are helping us out with our way forward there. For WALK, that's been our major work as liaising with the base, with Global Strike Command, with our community agencies and congressional delegation on mission sustainment. To support that, we've conducted a housing study, being prepared for the growth that is associated with those missions. We've conducted a child care study. We've done promotional videos, because if you ever have kind of talked about Missouri as a flyover state, we're out in the middle of nowhere. We're not exactly Fort Lost in the Woods, but we are out in the middle of kind of nowhere compared to some of the installations. And we've developed some marketing pieces to help promote our communities and our installations. So overall, we have a really good way forward right now, and that's because of how our community leadership has engaged. Then on the national level, with the Association of Defense Communities, you heard Colonel speak about intergovernmental service agreements and the partnerships. He mentioned the Defense Communities Infrastructure Program. Just a show of hands, how many are familiar with the Association of Defense Communities? Okay, a few. For those of you who are not, that organization represents about 300 defense communities across the nation. We focus on the policy level advocacy, funding. We have the Defense Communities Infrastructure Program that's funded, that has supported a variety of projects across our country, including a preschool down at Fort Leonard Wood in its first year. So there are, if you're not familiar, I know there were some questions about how we engage further and strengthen that network. There are avenues either through SOP, WALK, ADC to engage, and we can help partner up and build that network. But it's a wonderful job. I want to talk a little bit before I wrap up about Whiteman, and there's an analogy here that I want to point out. Yes, we have the B-2, and yes, that's the tip of spear for the nuclear triad and strategic deterrence. But what Whiteman is also known for is its total force integration. So we have the active duty 509th Wing that is partnered as a classic associate with the Missouri National Guard 131st. And then we have a reserve unit with the 442nd and a number of other units that all combine into what we call the total force integration. And that is really the hallmark of one of the ways that Whiteman is so unique. And I think the analogy here is the National Security Crossroads is trying to do the exact same thing. We have so many stars and so many assets that are right here in our region. It's just how do we align that? How do we integrate? How do we multiply that force factor and really strengthen what we offer here in the region? And again, I'm just so excited to see what's going on here, and we're just getting started.
Thanks, Dr. Wheeler. That was fantastic, and really thanks the leadership at the local, regional, and then that work at ADC that's really at that national level is commendable, and appreciate that. And again, what you've done there at Noster is certainly something for others to look at, not just in education, but how do you come into an area of needs and challenges, insert leadership, get the will of a group, an organization, whatever it takes, and turn that around. So thanks, fantastic. Okay, also to all of you, awesome, fantastic job. Goal was to have 10 minutes for questions. So I'm gonna pause right now and open it up similar to the previous. If you have a question, just please raise your hand. We'll go to those first, and if not, I'll continue to work the dialogue here. Any questions?
My name is Joe Driscoll, and I am a Civilian Aid Secretary of the Army for the northern half of Missouri. Here's a question. So we have a lot of talk in Washington about cutting defense budgets, cutting services budgets, changing the way our services work, focus on Indo-Pacific, lots of changes we hear about. But with the cutting of the numbers, how do we make sure that leaders of the Pentagon don't forget about the critical role of communities in supporting Army installations and Navy bases and Air Force bases around the country? We spent, Association of Defense Communities and others have spent 25 years trying to make sure that the services and DoD leadership understand that our military cannot do its job. It cannot be lethal, like we hear from Washington. We want to focus on lethality and the ethos of being warriors. That can't happen unless our communities, where 2/3 of our military members and families live, unless there's that great relationship. How do we convince them that that's important?
That starts out with people in the room here. And then that reaches across when we talk about the importance of that community connection. We were very fortunate where we had Chief of Staff of the Army visit Fort Riley a couple weeks ago. And we highlighted the mission capability of Fort Riley, which, again, that's why I ask, hey, we need people to push on the military side of the capabilities of Fort Riley. It blows all the other Army installations away on what we could do on the military training side. But when we started talking about the community relations, we started talking about the IGSAs. Chief of Staff was in disbelief when we were talking about our design build IGSA. And the example I used is, last year when the Chiefs were winning a playoff game and it was negative 41 degrees, we lost the dining facility. Every pipe in the dining facility froze. We're currently in a renovation of that project that'll finish up this year. Total time about 15 months, start to finish, complete renovation, tear down interior walls, new HVAC system, everything brand new on the inside. It's going to look like a modern cafeteria to a tune of about $7 million. That's our design build IGSA. If we would have done that through USACE, and it sounds like I'm bashing USACE, but I love our engineer partners, but the federal overhead, that project would be about $12 million and take twice as long because we have to go through the process that we could speed up when we're doing it locally. So highlighting that to him was very eye-opening. And it ended with, I had to send an email directly to Chief of Staff of the Army. Hey, sir, here's what this means. Here's how we're doing it. It's above board. It's signed off by the Assistant Secretary of the Army. And creating that dialogue. It's highlighting those niche issues or opportunities that make a difference. That's why every opportunity we get, we're talking our IGSA, we're talking the partnership, because we need help carrying that message up to the NCR.
I would very quickly just say that if you look at what's happened over the last 4 to 5 years with this shift of focus to quality of life, so we're talking childcare, public education, healthcare, housing, spousal employment, if you can package all those together and then attribute that to the fact that we were able to hit our recruiting goals across most of the branches of service, the story tells itself of how important the community advocacy and support is for the mission set and human capital. And right now, there's a lot of unknown. We've talked sports themes all day, but what's the first thing Andy Reid says when he gets to the mic? Usually, he talks about the amazing fans that support the team and support the players. I think we have to carry that message up and talk about the amazing team that is found in our communities across all of our defense communities, how important that is for mission set. And the proof is in the pudding.
The thing I would say is I think you just have to keep telling your community story. You have to tell it to your senior leaders. We go into the Pentagon, we engage with the Undersecretary of the Army, the Chief of Staff of the Army, the Vice Chief, and we invite those level leaders to come out to our installation. We believe that our installation is like your favorite car lot. If you can just get folks out there on the car lot, they're likely to buy into what you're selling. And so we're very confident in what we're doing as a community to support the installation, but we also have to continue to tell our story to our congressional delegation. We enjoy unparalleled support from our congressional delegation, but I believe that's in part because they have trust and confidence in us, and we tell them they're very busy people. Their staffs are very busy. They're very professional people that are very responsive, but they kind of count on us to remind them of how important it is what we're doing. And so we really have been fortunate over the years to do that. And I would just tell you that part of telling your story, and I think this is just like National Security Crossroads, you're going to have to tell your story. When we met a couple of times with General Simonite, who was the Army Corps of Engineers and a former general officer at Fort Leonard Wood, and he said, Dorsey, you guys got to get it together. When you come in and talk to someone like me or others, you've got to have something glossy product or something you can slap down on the table and show people what your community's all about and what your installation's all about. And so we created this, and I left some of these out there at the registration table, but we use these when we engage with folks, and it gives some highlights about our community and our state. And then on the reverse side of it, it talks about our installation, our mission in the future. So I think it just amounts to just persistently telling your story and staying bought into what you're doing.
I failed to do a pitch for our own product that we do as well. Every January, we release our economic impact summary. And just like Fort Leonard Wood, this is not a standard in the military, particularly in the Army. It's a best practice that we need. If installations want to get their message out there, it's producing, here's what we do for the community, here's what the community does for us, here's the influence on one side or the other. So it's having products like this that you could throw into a bag, you throw into a pocket, and you can take it and reference it. Yeah, so I got a couple of these. Anybody wants them? We have a handful of these as well. But things like this are very important.
Fantastic question, as evident in fantastic response from all of our panelists. And I really love where it started and then where it carried through. It started, Colonel Nunziato, from you saying the answer's this room and what the NSC is really striving and identified as opportunity and what it could be, which is fantastic. And then on to team, and that team is, all the contributors and all the supporters and everybody behind it, ultimately to the story, which is, the facts and telling it and making sure you're telling it consistently and accurately. So products are all fantastic as well. Part of this, we have produced some products. There's more that certainly can be done, whether it's economic impact analysis, 100% agree. That's numbers, that's math, that's the reality. Whether it's gap analysis to help with that discussion on mill-friendly and what can the state and the region be doing, whether that's to attract, transitioning service members or support to active service members and civilian counterparts. So really appreciate that, putting a bow on all this, because I think I'm bingo on time, Michael. Certainly part of that action plan identifies best practices, those states that do this well. Kansas and Missouri certainly does it well, but always opportunity to look over your shoulder and see those things, and we've identified some of those in the action plan. There is a path forward, beginning with, as the Colonel started with, the answer's right here. The NSC can be just that, and those are tough challenges to take on, but challenges that can be succeeded in. So please, a big round of applause for our panel here. Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen.
That was the Military Installations and Defense Communities panel of the recent National Security Crossroads event. Stay tuned for our final episode in this series, which will cover defense supporting industries. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Inside EcoDevo podcast so you can stay up to date on episodes just like this one. Thanks for listening.